McDonald's had human meat found in their factories.
Chopping up little kids.
Yeah, hell yeah.
No way.
Man, that's 8 years ago. Address that shit 8 years ago.
Yes, he could be full of shit. He also could be a fucking genius.
What is the oldest sport?
There was coliseums where they'd fight fucking lions and tigers and bears. So you're telling me that's not the first sport?
I tell you I'm on the road. About to get all this dough. Me and no fuck niggas know. I swear to God we the ghosts. This ain't the story they told. Man, if you know, then you know. I never had to tell my dogs that we on room for greatness. They paper getters, they want money more
Did
than
the
they
Oilers
want
win? Oilers won. Let's go. Put $150 on him, Joshua. I'd never watch hockey. Red Lobster, R.I.P. Have you ever had Red Lobster?
The Red Lobster story is actually pretty fucking nuts.
What about it?
So I only know what I know because of Jack Mack. So shout out to Jack Mack for doing this. But Red Lobster seeks bankruptcy protection after closing dozens of restaurants. That's like the headline going on, but it's so much deeper than that. It's actually incredible. So Red Lobster did like a unlimited shrimp thing a little bit ago, which cost them like $11 million, all this thing, whatever. So this big corporation bought Red Lobster, but they bought Red Lobster not because they gave a fuck about Red Lobster. It was purely because they wanted the real estate.
Yeah.
So then what they did was after they bought Red Lobster for a couple $2 billion or whatever it was, like $1.5 billion, then they sold all the land that Red Lobster owned to one of their holding companies, or technically it's not officially like their company. It is their company.
Of course.
And so then after Red Lobster sold the land to the corporation, a different corporation than the one that bought them, technically, even though it's the same thing, they then leased it back to Red Lobster for way over market value. Therefore, now it allows Red Lobster to file for bankruptcy, and they're really not going to lose shit.
Yeah.
And so this is a very similar play. This is what Vegas did. So MGM, Caesars, they are massive casinos that have super, super expensive real estate, and they actually couldn't afford the real estate with how the casino is. They need so much money on hand, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So then that's where you get the Caesar enterprise that owns all the land underneath it. It leases it back to the casinos, and then the casinos are allowed to take that money and invest it a lot of different ways, where if they had the real estate, they wouldn't be able to do it. So it's very interesting.
I also think I saw someone talking about this, and it was more so about Red Lobster, but it's all these like brands we grew up with, these old restaurant, whatever. People don't give a fuck about Red Lobster. Like, I don't see a Red Lobster, I'm like, ooh, I want to go to Red Lobster. I'm like, I want to go to this steak place or this place that catches fresh fish right out of the fucking ocean right by it and eat my food. Like, I don't ever want to go to a big brand restaurant ever.
Yeah, but
like, it's like, oh, let's go to Applebee's. Like, no.
It's just a name, right? And I think that the name does matter to an extent. But it's just like, this might be a little different, but it was like when America put all the sanctions on Russia,
they just changed
the names of everything. And like McDonald's was like there's a quote that says McDonald's has never been in two countries that were at war with each other. They've never had that, which is so false.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like IKEA and McDonald's, they're still in Russia, and all these other chains, they just changed the name of it. Like the McDonald's in Russia, instead of the M, it's now it's turned sideways. It looks like a B.
Yeah,
it's the same exact thing.
I wanted to bring that up in one of the videos. I had a video of it. It was like showing like KFC was like QRC. Like it was like same menu, same colors, different mascot, and a little different wording on the names.
And how they do it is what McDonald's did was they hired a local group. So it's a local Russian group that is now in charge of it. So McDonald's is like, oh, we're on a different hand. So it's just very interesting to me that there's so many loopholes with these corporations, how they can do it, how they can move. Like if you think that McDonald's just sold all their Russian stuff, they didn't. They just put it under a new corporate handle, under a new thing, under new management that makes it look local, but really it's global. And it's very interesting.
It's wild. They definitely stole that. And I'm more so speaking about the Red Lobster people in the group that bought them. They stole that book right from McDonald's. Mm-hmm. It's all about real estate. It's all about the land.
I think it might be maybe McDonald's, maybe they sold for McDonald's, but when I saw the Red Lobster stuff, I literally was thinking like that's Vegas. That's literally how Vegas is run.
It could be Vegas, but you also
Yeah.
where I took it from is, when you watch the movie about McDonald's, the founder, and Ray Kroc is like, no, we're in the real estate business. It's not a burger business. It's like, where can you put the location that's going to get the most foot traffic that's then going to drive the sales?
No,
and
it makes
that
sense.
is kind of the same thing, because now if you own the real estate, that doesn't need to be fucking Red Lobster. It can be fucking Lobster Red. It doesn't matter. You just change the fucking name, make a new brand that you're not paying all these franchise fees, because that's what those big brands really make money off of, is the franchise fees, which is what McDonald's does. But McDonald's also pours billions of dollars into their real estate research.
For sure.
So what they do is like Burger King and Wendy's, because McDonald's throws so much money into doing that research, they then put Burger King's and Wendy's right by McDonald's, because those companies are like, they have the best location, but we're like close enough, and we didn't have to put billions of dollars into finding that location.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's really just the branding of it. McDonald's literally has the best real estate in the world. They have the most real estate in the world. Like, they have like the most corners. McDonald's does it the best.
I'm gonna do a video on something kind of rated R about McDonald's, but I want to get your brand
I
on
think that this is what the best pot. That I think you should drop it now, because I think this is like more of a podcast conversation than video conversation.
I'm still gonna make a short form clip about it, because I'm gonna compare it to Rick and Morty. But it came out in 2013, 2014 that McDonald's had human meat found in their factories, and also horse meat. And they've also been accused of using like worm fillers within the meat. Like, that's just like kind of throughout history. But what I thought was most interesting about it, I was like, okay, doing something completely at scale, it makes sense. Kids get taken everywhere all the time from orphanages.
You think they're just fucking chopping up little kids?
Hell yeah.
No way.
Or body. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's indirect. I don't think it's directly McDonald's doing it. I think it's through this processor that processes this, that then goes to McDonald's. Like, they're 2-3 people away from what's actually going on, is my theory. But what it made me think of is the Rick and Morty episode where they eat spaghetti from the alternate universe, where they like open up the dead bodies and they're like delicious spaghetti that people love.
Yeah, just to give context, it's the Rick and Morty episode where in a different dimension.
I said a different.
Yeah, but
I said
like
alternate universe.
but it's not when they die they turn into. It's their guts are considered spaghetti.
But they eat them when they're dead.
Yeah.
So it's like whether it's their spaghetti already or
whatever
when they die. But it just made me think about that. But what I honestly thought was most interesting about it was, so this broke in like 2013, 2014. But they started writing articles about it being like fake news in 2021, 2022. So why did it take 7-8 years to address it? Yeah, could social media have like brought it to light?
Yeah,
possibly.
probably.
But like, man, that's 8 years ago. Address that shit 8 years ago.
I don't know. I think that it would be very hard for a company like McDonald's to be just having a slaughter factory of humans, that they just were like, oh, we're going to throw this 1 part horse, 1 part human, 4 parts cow. No. I don't think that's the case. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. And to me, whenever I see like these like journalists being like, we found human remains, like, motherfucker, I know a lot of journalists and they're all fucking boneheads for the most part. Like, no one is like doing investigative journalism. They're fucking sitting here going, I read this wiki article and now it's truth. So to me, I don't really buy into it. I would need to see some legitimate proof from a legitimate source that is actually testing these things on hand. Like, I need some real deep dive I want some Alex Jones, Bohemian Grove iPhone footage of motherfuckers getting chopped up, and I'll believe it.
But I don't think it's
because
in
to
that
me,
factor they're doing it. Like I said, it's 2-3 people away from them.
And it's like, to me, when they're like, oh, we found human meat, like in I don't know why horse meat is so bad. What the difference is between a horse and a cow? I don't know. What the fuck is the difference?
I think a horse is like a frowned upon thing in America.
But why?
I think it's like one of those things that's like frowned upon.
Okay,
it's like eating dog.
Again, I understand why, because dogs are like friendly, but like, why? In India, they're like, oh, cows are, and then we eat cows like a motherfucker. Yeah. So it's like, I think that from culture to culture, you might think it's weird, but I don't think that in general it's weird. If motherfuckers got hungry, horses would be fucking eaten. So how sacred would your fucking horse be if you were hungry? You
Listen.
wouldn't be that fucking sacred. How sacred would if you were starving and your fucking dog was there? You'd be like, sorry, little Ricky. And it might take a while to get to that point, but like if you were desperate enough, it don't fucking matter.
Do you think McDonald's is the biggest brand in the world?
One of, yeah. I think that McDonald's is, yeah.
I think it's the biggest brand in the world.
I think that McDonald's is definitely one of the biggest brands in the world. There's probably a couple brands that in America that we don't really feather that much. And again, I think saying the biggest brands in the world are an American brand might be a little too much just because.
But McDonald's is literally everywhere.
Yeah, but Alibaba is everywhere and billions of people use it. And again, that could be the biggest one. Like there could be a Chinese brand that, a couple billion people use. And yes, McDonald's is
they have
very
McDonald's
well known.
in China.
Of course they do. But that doesn't make it the biggest brand in China. You know what I'm saying? Like we look at it from a lens of like, yes, McDonald's has served billions of people, but they're not the only company in the world that served billions of people. Like Alibaba, all these other things that are like, they are serving billions of people. It's like they could be just as well known to that side of the world than McDonald's is to this side of the world.
Amazing. So if we're going to, it's a top 3 brand in the world.
Yes,
would you
for
say
sure.
that?
I would say
okay,
that.
great. So top 3 brand, that means they have ultimate power. They have unlimited amounts of money. So they could essentially control the narrative if they did have human meat or were doing things wrong in the factory. It means they own news sources, they own the food inspectors, they own all the investigators. Like they can control it. So I think to completely disprove that there's human meat, horse meat, worm fillers in the burgers is completely naive, honestly, because you got to understand, they're doing this at scale. Like how
For
many
sure.
burgers a day is McDonald's serving?
No clue.
I don't think there's enough fucking cows in the world.
Yes, there are.
Maybe.
Listen, the reason why people
You
are
gotta let them grow and eat, and
Yeah,
you need
but
milk for milk. And
that's
shit.
why people are so concerned about cars and gas. They're like, the CO2 from my fucking diesel truck is killing the earth. When you actually look at it, and it's like 0.05% of the carbon outtake is from like vehicles and airplanes and whatever that is.
This is such a good transition.
But that's what I'm saying. Where cows and livestock makes up like 75% of that. So you have to understand, we have way more cows, way more fucking livestock than we ever have in the history of the fucking world. It's because we bred it that way because we need it.
I don't think CO2 is bad for the atmosphere
I don't fucking
because the cows
I'm
naturally.
not
Because the
I'm
cows,
not a scientist.
Either am I. But the cows naturally release it, and I don't think there's anything that's natural on this earth that is then bad for the earth.
Yeah, maybe. I listen. I've been watching a lot of Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan Experience. Let my mind just get blown.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a fucking scientist. I don't fact check things, but the way that he talks and the way that he says things, it's like I think a lot of the science that we grew up learning
It's manipulated.
is manipulated 100%. And people will be like, "Well, why would they do that?" And it's like
control.
It's control. You don't want people to always free think. And there's a reason why America's being latched down on is because there's been a little too much free thinking. There's been a little too much freedom. Then people are like, ooh, it's really hard to control people when when they can freely think and be like, oh, that's not right. And they can collectively get a bunch of people like, no, that's not right.
That's why democracy is nowhere near in the world besides like the US, because it's hard to control the people. It's slow. It's intense. You have to essentially let people protest. But once you try to latch down, limit information, eliminate the free thinking, which is, if you look at the progression of how they did things, you have public school trying to control your thinking. They're trying to manipulate you, trying to teach kids. Okay. Then they're trying to teach you to go to school, get a job, fucking save, invest your money in a 401k. Well, to get anywhere ahead in life, you literally have to do the opposite of that. So the free thinking has been manipulated, and I think there's going to be even more free thinking. I think social media has exposed a lot of things of the internet, which is like kind of why the McDonald's thing's resurfaced, why you're starting to hear about the Terrence Howard thing on the Joe Rogan, and even all these podcasts are having these super smart people that are going against the grain, and people are like, there's people like us where we're like, oh, fuck, that's interesting because we're open to it.
Yeah.
And then you have people that are like, that's completely fucking wrong because they've studied their whole life something that's wrong, and they don't want to be like, holy fuck, I just wasted 20 years of my life to learn the wrong information.
This might be like kind of crazy, but the Terrence Howard episode, he said something very interesting, and again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how fucking accurate this is, but it does make a lot of sense. And he talks about how the Earth isn't like, we're in the Goldilocks zone, technically, right? And the Goldilocks zone is basically the perfect conditions where the sun hits, like we're in this perfect rotation with the sun, where it gives us the atmosphere where humanoids can be allowed, like can be able to be formed like us, right? And we can live on this Earth without having problems. Mars was in this zone and all these things, right? They think there was life on Mars, you know, all this stuff, right? But Mars is now out of the Goldilocks zone. Now it's frozen, whatever, blah, blah, blah. There's a huge asteroid belt, which is basically full of like tons of, like you can't even go through it, right? There's so many asteroids in this belt. And Terrence Howard thinks that it was blown up because all these Earths, all these planets aren't solid cores. When you put a bunch of cylinders or circles together, there's going to be a hole in the middle. Like this Earth that we are on doesn't have a solid core, even though we might like to think about it. And he was talking about how CERN, that the company that's finding the God element and all that stuff, he thinks that there was another planet before Mars, that was in the Goldilocks zone, that they were trying to figure out all these things. They were humanoids, and they actually popped the bubble, and it blew up the planet.
Killed everybody.
It killed everyone, right? And if you add up everything that's in the asteroid belt, it equals the planet. And it's very interesting in how we talk, and he actually talks about how the Earth moves 0.6 inches every year away from the sun, which means in a couple billion years, we'll be out of the Goldilocks zone, and Venus will be in the Goldilocks zone, and then humanoids will all start again. And it's like this very interesting cycle where it's like
really interesting.
Yeah, and he also talks about how like there's a lot of things that go over my head.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that like no one ever talks about these things, and they almost try to hinder it. Like everything is to limit us, and we might not be these things. We might live in a simulation. We might have a crater. Maybe the crater isn't what we think it is. It could be a lot of different things, right?
For sure.
So long story short, I think that we should be questioning everything. So like to go back to like the meat thing, yes, that call could be like that.
Yeah.
We don't know. I think it's us questioning things. And I think that people that are very quickly to be like, no, that's not it. You're already wrong.
I think the best.
You're already wrong if you're not questioning those things.
I think the best answer in human history, and obviously there's different languages, so there's different translations to this, is maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Always maybe.
Yeah, it could be.
Unless you've done 50 years of research and like have gone against the grain a million times, and then you still settled over here, like maybe you could be like, this is actually the right answer. Like unless you're doing that, the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
It's never no. It's not yes. It's maybe.
And I also think that a lot of people are quick to dismiss things that like we will never know. So it's like, how can you be so certain on these things, right?
It makes people feel insecure that they don't know.
Yeah,
or they're not in control.
But long story short, I think that a lot of things that we have learned have been a lie in a sense for certain reasons. And I think that Terrence Howard will be discredited at every corner because he grew up an actor and he grew up all these things. And he has if you actually watch the interview with Joe Rogan, he says some wild things. And I mean, from the first second that he gets on, he talks about his first memory being inside his mom's womb. And at first you're like, okay, buddy, let's just chill out a little bit
But
here.
he knew the retention span was off. He had to hit it quick.
But then he tries to prove it. He proves it with his son that he can actually have memories. And he talks about how he every day at 6 p.m. would turn a certain song on, would put a flashlight on his wife's belly and go across with it. And then after a week, his son would start following his hand. And then now when his kid's born, he's super aficionated to the light and all these things. And it's like, maybe there is something to that. And then he has all these, like, he says he didn't learn anything he has 97 patents. He said he didn't learn any of this stuff from school or reading it. He said that he would have a dream, and in his dream, he would lucidly dream, and then he would go to this palace where he would teach him things. And then it makes me think, like, is this from a different life? You know what I mean? Like, are these things that we're just unlocking? Like, is he able just to unlock a different life that he already lived? I have no idea. It's just very interesting. It's like, yes, he could be full of shit. He also could be a fucking genius. And that's where I
don't think people that could talk like that and essentially communicate that well are full of shit.
No, he's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
not. Like,
I'll never believe it.
I'm not saying that everything that Terrence Howard is saying is truth, but I'm also saying that not everything he's saying is bullshit.
No,
and I think it's
there's
very
some real shit in there.
I think that even what we should say, we should take it with a grain of salt, but we should also be like, we should challenge these traditional things that you're being taught, and sometimes ask yourself, why am I being taught this? Out of all the things in the world, why am I being taught this? Because it's really not true. Even when you look at like fucking Martin Luther King and like Rosa Parks, you hear that story, and that's not even how it went down. That was a planned event. But when you teach it in school, they're like, oh, she had a long day at work and she refused. No. This was a fucking strategically planned thing that now when you are taught it, you were like, oh, it was just a hard work. No. So it's like everything in school is meant to be taught that way for a reason, for control, for whatever. So I think we should challenge those beliefs.
So I want to transition. Last question. Joshua, what is the oldest sport in human history?
Fighting.
You want to lock that in.
I mean, it'd probably be around that, fighting of some sort.
And you could be right, but that wasn't the way I was taking it. But fighting has kind of been America's pastime, but like actual rules and regulations. So if you want to...
Are you talking about America or the world?
I believe it's the world, but we can do America.
I mean, the oldest things that could possibly be would be like fighting and like running. What is it?
Lacrosse.
I could say America, but yes, I would agree. I that was probably up there with me because there's Native Americans that created lacrosse in America. I already know that. But to me, I'm like...
But like fighting wasn't like,
all
right, there's a fight at 7 p.m. tonight for the world heavyweight belt back in the 1700s. There was no.
Exactly. Yes, it wasn't that.
They were fighting for their life, or someone owned them, and they're like, "You're fighting."
But that's sport, right? Like there was coliseums where they'd fight fucking lions and tigers and bears. So you're telling me that's not the first sport?
But not fight to the death.
What's a sport? What's considered a sport, right? Like I think that's where it comes down to.
Referees
doesn't matter. A referee, a referee makes a sport?
Kind of.
No.
It makes an official game.
I don't know.
How many pickup basketball games have we played? However many. Yeah. If you put a ref out there, we'd be like, this is official.
Sure, but I think that, again, a referee, like the referee could have been the king who was sitting up top being like, I'm the fucking referee, motherfuckers. Who knows? I think we're looking at it from like a basis of like today's standards. Back in the day, the sport could have been like, motherfucker, I'm going to race you to the next hill. I don't know.
For sure. And the reason I thought of that is Paul Rabel was talking about it, and he said it was the oldest sport. And I was like, no way. And I fact-checked him. It was right.
Yeah. No, I knew that. I knew because they used to, again, I could be fucking completely wrong. Maybe this was soccer where the Native Americans would like cut the guys' heads off and play with their heads.
Oh
Maybe
my
that was
God.
I don't know. There's some dark history with that.
Wow. Well, that's a great spot to leave it off on, Osh. If you made it this far, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
I gotta stack out this gold. I tell you I'm on the road. About to get all this dough. Me and no fuck niggas know. I swear to God we the ghosts. This ain't the story they told. Man, if you know, then you know. I never had to tell my dogs that we on rough for greatness. They paper getters, they want money more than they want fame shit.